bike race.
Gravel, 1,347 feet of climbing.
All right, guys, I might see you at the end.
Full gas.
The Midwest Spring Classic. And Rough Road 100 about to get underway with all of our riders heading towards that right-hand turn.
Yo, welcome back to the channel, boys and girls. In today's video, we are doing a race breakdown and commentary of the Midwest Classic Rough Road 100. So we're going to be talking about the course, some of the details in the race, my fitness, my bike setup, some of the moves that I made, all of that good stuff here. And by the way, if you are new to my channel, my name is Patrick Lino and I am a cyclist here in Chicago who does bike reviews. I build bikes, and if you ever see me out on gravel country roads, it's either because of one or two reasons. One, it's either because I'm on my brand new gravel bike, or two, it's because I am running for my freedom. Get out. And finally, today's video is sponsored by the Pros Closet, because the Pros Closet was so kind enough to send me out a set of their ENVE Gravel G23 wheels to do this race. And right now the Pros Closet is running a really nice promotion through April 19th, which is you get $100 off all orders of $1,000 or more. You get free shipping on everything, and you also receive up to $300 off select bikes at the Pros Closet. So I'll be sure to provide all of those details down below in the description. So without further ado, let's begin. So what is Rough Road 100? Well, if you live in the Midwest, or if you've traveled or raced in the Midwest, you know that Rough Road 100 is a really popular mixed terrain road race here, just about an hour or so outside of Chicago. Now, I wouldn't consider it a gravel race. It's more or less a road race. It's about 60% country roads, 30% hard packed gravel, and then there's about 10% of soft-ish, slightly muddy roads. It's 100 kilometers long, and there's only about 350 meters of elevation, and the majority of that elevation comes from a couple of pretty decent hills towards the tail end of the race. Now, I was pretty pumped for this race because even though I've been training to do crits and maybe even do some TTs down the road once I eventually get a TT bike set up, what's really cool about the road races is I basically treated it as a group ride. Now, basically how they had everything set up at the beginning of the races, they had everybody that was competing at the top of their categories, so Cat 1, 2, 3, and 4. All of those folks were starting at the front of the race, and then all of the novice / Cat 5, and then all the recreational people started at the back. So this was actually the first mistake that I made when I started up on this race. Now, even though I'm still registered as a Cat 5 novice, I really should have started towards the front, and you're going to see throughout this video that I end up having to bridge about 7 or 8 times. I'm not going to show you all the 7 or 8 times that I had to bridge, but starting at the back, you realize that unless you keep your head on the swivel, there were so many gaps being open that I basically was bridging probably the first hour of the race. Okay, so fast forwarding a little bit here. So right here, I am going to not put on a full-on attack, but I'm realizing that the group I'm in, they're just not going the pace that I want because my legs are feeling really good. So I go ahead and bridge to this group ahead. Now, this was a pretty long bridge that I ended up doing. So I didn't definitely want to blow myself up too quickly here. So I'm just putting my head down here. I'm putting out pretty decent watts here. I mean, I'm putting at, what is this, like 350 watts, which for me is like, I don't know, 4.5 watts per kilo, 4.75, something to that effect here. But yeah, I'm just putting my head down. I'm just trying to close this gap here. And this is one of the many mistakes I made with this race is, and I've kind of said it already, is number one, it's similar to a Zwift race. Don't start at the back of the group, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up being stuck with the group that may not be going the pace that you want to go, and now you're just going to have to put in a dig to catch the group ahead here. And the reason why I started at the back was because I was just trying to be very humble, so to speak, because this was my first, not only my first race of the season, this was actually my first road race ever. At this point, I had only done crits, so I just wanted to be safe. I didn't want to undermine anyone. I figured I'll just stay in the back. We'll see how it goes. And if I'm feeling good, I'll start to move forward, which is basically what I did here. But basically what I'm doing at this point is I'm trying to bridge ahead because The group you're seeing up ahead, I believe that is the chase group to the front group. Now, the front group of it all, the Cat 1, 2s, and 3s, those guys were hammering. Now, just to put in perspective, I finished this in about, I think, just under 3.5 hours for 100K. And those guys at the front, the Cat 1, 2, 3s, they finished this course in about 2 hours and 45 minutes. So it's crazy. So even if I had made it to the front, I know that it would not be an effort that I could sustain for 3 hours. And so that's probably the second thing that I learned doing this road race, is you have to really dial down what sort of effort and power you can sustain for 3 hours. And this is where a power meter is going to be so effective here. And so yeah, you're gonna see that this is a really long bridge for me, but my legs are feeling really good at this point, so I don't really have a lot to complain about. But yeah, I do eventually end up catching this group. The only thing I'm just really bummed about is that because this is the chase group to the front pack of all the Cat 1, 2, 3 guys, if we all just worked together, I think we could have caught them. And I think collectively, because we would have ended up being a bigger group, that we all could have worked together and stayed with that front group a lot longer, which could probably drop down my finishing time from, say, I don't know, 3 hours and 25 minutes to maybe just a shy over 3 hours. But nonetheless, yeah, in these road races, especially at this length, you basically just have to find a group that works for you, kind of just sit in, and hopefully you can work together and just kind of work in sort of an echelon pace. So as you guys can see, yep, I'm still grinding away. Again, now this is an effort that I can sustain. And when you figure in a Cat 5 crit race, which is only 25 to 35 minutes long, I'm really trying to dial in and see what sort of power I can sustain for 30 minutes. So, I mean, when I first got into cycling, being able to hold 225 watts for 30 minutes was painful. And now I can sit at 225, 250, like probably all day, every day for 3 hours, no problems at all. So I finally catch this group, thank the Lord. And right as I catch them, and this is my mistake for not really recounting the courses as good as I should have, right when I catch them, we start to go uphill on this pinch, which you're gonna see in a minute here. All right, yeah, I believe this is where it starts to go uphill. I can't remember. Yep. Okay. Yeah. So you're seeing everyone's starting to get out of the saddle. Everyone is spinning up here. I think it goes all the way up to maybe 7 or 9%. Yeah. So this is where we start grinding it out.
What's up, bro? How you doing? How are you, man? Hanging in there. Yes. Okay. It's personal. No. I got you once I'm not out of the saddle. You're doing good. Good to see you, man. How you been? Greg. Patrick. Nice to meet you. You too, Greg.
Yeah, I'm famous. People know me out in these streets, son. That's what I'm telling you.
Okay, out here, man? Yeah. Overdressed, but yeah, never overcarb. You never know. Yeah.
Okay, so jumping ahead a little bit here. So this is the first section of quote unquote gravel that we raced over. So as you can see, it's pretty hard packed gravel. It's not anything really to be concerned about. So because the gravel wasn't that terrible, what came to play, which is really important, was the tire choice for this race. So I took a poll of all the different clubs in my area and even some of my own teammates, asking them what tires they were running. And there was a wide spectrum of tires, but basically gravel tires in its purest form was not the choice. So people were running everything between 28C to 32 or even 35C slick tires. And as far as frames goes, some people were running road frames with these 32C slick tires, but the majority of people were either running their gravel bike or their cyclocross bike. So for myself, and I mentioned this in my video earlier with my ENVE wheels, that I was running my brand new Yoeleo G21 gravel frame set. Now the geometry is definitely set up more for exploring and when you're spending long days out on the road. So it's not exactly a race focused frame setup that I have, but that's okay because I don't plan on doing that many gravel sort of races where aerodynamics is really that important. And even if it was that important, I probably would just attach some sort of clip-on aero bars to make myself more aero and comfortable here. But this section here, man, there were some crazy cross and headwinds going on. I want to say at any given time there were some gusts up to about 20 to 25 miles an hour, which I don't know what that is in kilometers, maybe like 35 kilometer per hour crosswinds and headwind. And so you can't really tell right here, but I'm putting out decent power and I'm not really going that fast because the crosswinds were just so crazy. So this was sort of the point in the race. And I mean, we're only 8.5 miles in out of the 60 miles, but this is where we all started to realize that working together in at least a little bit of an echelon would pay off. But the problem is when you only have half the group that wants to work together, the echelon ends up just stopping work. And so for any of you guys out there, if you haven't been training or practicing your echelons in some of your group rides locally, or even in some of your fast rides locally, this is definitely an important skill to learn, because you're going to be able to save energy, you save watts, which ultimately means you're going to save your legs and prevent yourselves from blowing up. And why I was so excited for this race is because, unlike with crits, you get a lot of racing, so to speak, for your money here. You figure this ride is about 3.5 or 3 hours long, depending on how fast you were going. So you figure you get to race out on the roads here versus it being some sort of 30-minute race where you can easily get dropped in the first couple of minutes. With this, yeah, you know, if you're at the front, you're definitely hammering, but for everyone else, you're basically just kind of sitting in. You're finding sort of your smaller group of folks to sort of ride and race with, keep everything safe. And yeah, you just basically just get busy, put your head down for 3 hours and just try to suffer through the whole entire race. And I gotta say, for me at this point, I could tell my fitness in the off season was working really well, because I put in some really good digs. Now granted, again, because I had started at the back, I unfortunately didn't make it all the way to the front group, but I did get pretty close. And so I'm just proud of the effort that I put in all the way through this race. Now let's talk about nutrition really quickly here as we jump ahead to another gravel section here. So I basically wanted to make sure I ate at least every 30 to 45 minutes. And that's why at the last minute, I ended up buying a top tube bag, because I wanted to be able to easily grab nutrition, anything I needed throughout the race, because I was wearing pretty thick gloves because it was pretty cold today, or on this day of this race. It was about 40 degrees, 38 degrees or so, which is maybe like 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. And so wearing thick gloves, I knew that I would not be able to easily grab any nutrition I needed from my back pockets of my jersey, and that just was going to mean that I would probably end up bonking out altogether. So I didn't want to do that. But yeah, nutrition was really good, and I have to say that for the pace I was going, because no matter how much I trained indoors, it's really difficult still to get that sort of real world feel unless you actually are going out and you are sustaining this really hard effort for 3 hours at 225 watts, whatever it is. I have to go back and see what my actual neutralized power was, but yeah, my nutrition was really good. However, I will say that towards the last 10 miles of it, which I don't have any footage of because apparently I don't know how to properly work a GoPro, but I did have some moments where I almost cramped. And I don't think it was either because of nutrition or because of lack of sodium or magnesium, potassium, anything like that. I think it was just simply because my legs are just pretty tired here. And the saddle that I was using, it was a pretty narrow saddle, and I've been running that saddle on some of my road bikes, and that definitely was the wrong decision. So I've already ordered a brand new saddle that I'm going to be using. That's a little bit more wide, a little bit less aggressive for a gravel bike. And also too, I actually had to pull over to the side of the road and lower my tire pressure, because at the beginning of the race, for my 32C tire slicks, I was running the Specialized Roubaix Pro slicks. I was running them at about 55 psi, and when I got to the last 10 miles of the super muddy area, my booty was just hurting. Pause. So I ended up having to pull over to the side of the road and drop the tire pressure down to about probably like 40, 45, and it made a world of difference, not just in comfort, but I actually could see my average speed was getting faster despite not putting out any more power. But overall, guys, this was super duper exciting. I think that road racing is going to be my new jam, because you get a lot for your money. You have such a wide spectrum of people and fitness that you'll always be able to work in and figure out which group works best for you with your fitness, with something that you will be able to sustain for the duration of the race. Coming up this summer here in the Midwest, there is a race up in Wisconsin. It's called the Race Around the Lake. I believe it's Lake Winnebago. it's like 85 miles long, and it's basically just this super fast group ride. So I can't imagine what it's going to be like to be out, you know, hammering for 85 miles, averaging about 26-27 miles per hour the whole entire time. It's going to be fun, and theoretically these road races should technically be a little bit safer than, you know, your typical 4-corner crit. Now I don't really know that, but I mean, there were some crashes in this race, believe it or not, and part of it was just a couple people were being a little bit irresponsible. Not anyone in the front group, in the Cat 1, 2, 3 group, but just some of the other people who I would deem more on the recreational level. They really just weren't paying attention to where they were riding, and they were, you know, they weren't protecting the front wheel. So what can you expect to do? But overall, guys, I was super pumped and hyped about this race. This was actually one of my hardest efforts I have ever done in my 2 years of cycling, and I'm super proud to say that in the end I ended up finishing about top 50 of all the 600 people that entered this race, and I actually ended up finishing top 15 for my age group, which was the 30 to 40 age group. So I'm super proud about that, guys, and I'm looking forward to where my fitness is going to continue to go, even though we are super early in the season. So I think we'll just end the video right here, guys. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down below, and I'm gonna check you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.